This particular stream is the country sessions. So right now we're going to have a session which looks at the Angolan and Mozambique real estate market. So first of all, if you don't know me, my name's Alexander. I'm the commercial manager for API Events, and I'll be the host from now on to the end of this particular session, on to the end of the day. Our first discussion will focus, as I said, on Angola and Mozambique. We will initially begin with a presentation from Fazio, who will focus on Angola and briefly touch on the Mozambique market. Then we will have Manuel Vieira, who will give us a presentation and an overview on Mozambique. Upon concluding that, there will be a panel discussion that will be moderated by Fazio, and we'll have an additional panelist, which is Paulo Cruz, and he's actually not only just from West Park, Ghana, but he's actually a board member of the Angolan real estate situation. So we'll initially begin with 2 10-minute presentations, and then, as I said, we'll have a moderated panel discussion. So if I can please call up Fazio to begin his presentation. Thank you.
Yes. Do we have a time?
It's 5 minutes, right? So
okay.
Yeah, I'll keep you posted.
Yeah.
And you've got this one.
Okay. Good afternoon. I want to thank for your presence here. Also thank API for inviting Standard Bank to this event. I would like to start by talking about the Angolan economy from a macroeconomic point of view. And as I speak, I will try to narrow into the property sector. This is the points that I would like to talk today. Why is it important to speak about oil prices for Angola? Then I'll speak briefly on what this country is doing from a policy point of view with the program with the IMF. I'll also speak about performance year to date and how the Standard Bank sees the Angolan economy performing going forward. I'll speak about monetary policy. There was a MPC meeting yesterday, and there is outcome that I would like to share as well. I'll speak about the fiscal adjustment and some of the items that we believe are critical for Angola to improve in many areas of the economy, including on the property sector, which is the ease of doing business. I'll also touch a little bit on privatizations, which I believe brings a lot of opportunities for the property sector. Of course, there is forward-looking here, and because of that, we need to present our disclaimer as a Standard Bank research team. We need to advise you that there is forecasts. Of course, we do not know the future, but we do our best to provide you with data and forecasts that reflect the best of our work. In terms of oil prices, I think the main information that we will take from this slide is to say that our main assumption is that oil prices will evolve around the mark that is currently today, which is not far from $60 per barrel. And this is the main assumption that drives all the other assumptions that we make in this study. In terms of Angola, I'm not sure how familiar you are with the Angolan economy. I was positively surprised to see that the narrative from the president, the new president, which is João Lourenço, it ties up with a lot of what they're doing now. He came into power in 2017, and his main speech was to say that he wanted to change Angola, not only from a corrupt state into a more transparent one, but also bring reforms that deliver some level of diversification, economy diversification. And then since he took power, we saw a number of plans being presented, but more than speeches from the president and the cabinet, I think we need to acknowledge that they did a brave move, which was to bring on board the IMF. So Angola is running with an IMF program, which is a funded program, and the first assessment of the program from the IMF was extremely positive. But let me also bring you some perspective. The type of challenges that Angola is facing are of structural nature, which means that even if they do the right things today, it takes time for the improvements to be felt on the pockets of people, on the markets, and on the businesses. So even if I'm optimistic about Angola because of the changes that they're doing, the reforms that they're implementing, I must say it's still a very challenging economic environment. One important element of the reforms is that Angola asked the US Treasury to come and support to help fight fight against money laundering and terrorism financing. And we believe that that support from the US authorities is also another critical element to help bring confidence to external investors. Among the reforms that I did, and I want to highlight in this presentation, is that they have changed the investment law. In the past, if you wanted to invest in Angola, you would need to find a local partner. And this local partner, most of the time, will not bring cash or money into the investment or the transaction. It will be a silent partner, but will help you with approvals that you may need to move on with your business. Fortunately, we have seen a change in that kind of practice. Then, under the new investment law, if you are going to Angola, you do not need a local partner. You can be 100% external investor into the Angolan economy. So I believe that is a strong change in positive one. Another change I would like to bring as well is that the Angolan government has announced a massive privatizations program. And I believe here lies an opportunity for the property sector. The government finally realized that the best role they can bring economic prosperity for Angola is if the government step down and allow private sector to operate the economy, which means government is looking at selling most of their business and focus on regulatory role, which means going forward, we should expect that a number of businesses that used to be in the hands of the government will be transferred into the hands of private sector. And here, I believe there's a lot of property opportunities that comes with it. There is one critical slide that I wanted to show to you, which is the red line on your left chart. As you can see from that chart, Angola oil production is on a declining trend. And that declining of oil output is basically because of maturing fields and limited investments that Angola did to replace the production and sustain production. One massive change that we have seen in the market was the creation of an oil and gas agency that replaces Sonangol as a regulator for the oil sector. With this new regulator, we started to see a renewed interest in investments in the oil fields in Angola. If they are successful with these investments, we could see oil production stabilizing at 1.4 million barrels per day. At that level, I believe there is some support for Angola balance of payments. If they fail to secure that level of investment, then you can see oil output reaching less than 1 million barrels per day. And that creates a huge problem for balance of payments. You can see the chart on the left is the exchange rate from Kwanza to dollar. And we can see that with limited foreign exchange availability, in Angola, the government had no option but to allow the currencies to start reflecting the imbalance between supply and demand. Angola runs a backlog of foreign exchange. There's been substantial progress in cleaning the backlog, but as we speak, a number of companies with businesses in Angola, they have invested their profits in local bonds, denominated in local currency, but linked to a dollar devaluation index, which allows them to keep in local currency a value equivalent to dollar, which means it's a protection against devaluation. There's been strong sales of foreign exchange from the Angola Central Bank, which is BNA, and through that we clearly saw a decline on the backlog, but I must say it remains a reality. The chart about inflation and interest rates provides us with an important information. We can see that even when inflation was in excess of 40% year on year, central bank did not raise interest rates, which means for a long period, real interest rates in Angola remain negative. And it's clear to the policymakers in Angola that that situation is not sustainable. So we can see that over the past few months, inflation sitting currently at 17%, BNA policy rate today is 15.5. So the negative interest rate, they remain negative interest rates, but very, very, very narrow at the moment. One important comment is that when we look at prices in Angola, property prices did not change much. Even if the economy is not growing, the property prices remain, I would say, elevated, but the rentals, they have reduced at more than 50%. And the decline on the rentals, the way we read, the decline on the rentals in Angola, it's not only because of the difficult economic situation that they live at the moment, but when we compare Angola to the other markets, we believe that the rentals, as we speak, they came to what is a normal market price. So if someone enters into the Angola market today, I believe it's entering at a time where the Angolan market prices became comparable with its peers, with the neighboring countries, with the neighboring markets. In the past, it was extremely prohibitive. It was extremely costly. I believe we'll have opportunity to discuss in panel what's going to happen to the real estate prices, not only the rentals that are charged from there. One important element of the Angolan story is that even when authorities saw the decline in oil prices, let's say the 2014 commodity price shock, they did not start the reforms that this country needed. And when you don't do the reforms, there is very limited options but to grow that. So on your left chart, we can see that to sustain the lifestyle that the Angola wanted to have, they grew sovereign debt exponentially to the point that themselves they understood that it was not sustainable to grow that anymore. When they reached to that conclusion, they started to cut expenditure. So you can see that as a percentage of GDP, Angola revenues reduced from 47% in 2012 to 19% of GDP. So massive decline on revenues, partially compensated by increase in borrowings. But we know that sound macroeconomic management requires that there is some level of prudency in managing the fiscal. So finally, we believe that Angola authorities acknowledge that they cannot sustain the economy with borrowings, and they start cutting the deficit. That's why we see on the bottom line, they're trying to maintain a 0% deficit, which means it's a deficit that does not grow borrowings. So I believe this provides you with the picture of what Angola is doing. I would say that, as my final comments, sound macroeconomic policy is important, especially to investors. And typically, property investors are long-term investors, and value for money is preserved if there is macroeconomic stability. But more than that, we believe that Angola needs to make substantial progress on the ease of doing business. It remains quite difficult to operate in Angola. So the change in investment law, the privatizations program, reforms supported by the IMF program, I believe are all changes in the right direction. But in my opinion, there's still a lot of pain to be taken before we can see some improvements in the Angolan market. Having said that, I must say that perhaps it's during these difficult times that some of the best investment opportunities becomes available, right? And of course, while it's difficult, very low number of investors are willing to go and expose themselves in that market. But based on my experience both in Angola and Mozambique, I believe that if you do a proper due diligence, there is business opportunities to be taken there. With this, I thank you, and I'll invite Manuel Vieira to share a presentation on Mozambique. Thank you very much.